Good evening, good afternoon, morning, whenever the fuck you're tuning in. This is our second bowl edition of Tailgate Trashtalk, brought to you by Backyard Sports. Sorry for the abrupt intro there. As I demonstrated last Thursday, if you were tuning into the Buckets podcast, having me on the controls is like worse than just hiring a monkey to do it. So apologize for that. Trying to hit go live and hit the intro and all that. This thing's too complicated for me. You would think I work in technology or something, but anyway, Bentley, how you doing, man?
I'm good, dude. I'm also battling my own technical difficulties as we've discussed multiple times, and I'm praying that they will be remedied tomorrow evening. So our basketball show, our NBA show Thursday, will be back to our regularly scheduled setup.
Yes,
So I feel
yes,
pretty
we
good.
are looking forward to have you back up and running full speed here. So, well, hey, let's jump into a little transfer portal news because we've had
Mm.
some big moves over the last kind of week and a half. We talked a little bit last week about some of the big moves that had happened then, but since then, we've had the number one wide receiver commit to Georgia, the number one wide receiver from the transfer portal
Hmm.
commit to Georgia. Vanderbilt's prolific wideout who, they lose Brock Bowers and ho hum. They just go grab another guy that can catch 100 balls and move the ball for maybe 1,200 yards. My beloved Syracuse Orange actually landed a big time quarterback from the transfer portal. Kyle McCord is taking his talents to Central New York. If you didn't know where Syracuse was, I wouldn't blame you, but it's in Central New York, not in New York City, as everybody likes to think that New York is just this little 13-mile island. I have to explain to them that I live in the D.C. area, and I am closer to New York City now than I was growing up, and I grew up in New York State. So,
Yep. Still
uh,
bit them Texas, baby.
yeah. And then on the recruiting trail, I just want to note because it's funny to me. I don't know why it's so funny, but it looks like Dion might be Coach Prime might be stealing another big time 5-star defensive back from Florida State. If you remember when he was at Jackson State, the two-way threat that is Travis Hunter, who was phenomenal at Colorado this year as well, had committed to Florida State. And then they were able to lure him to Jackson State. So it looks like potentially Coach Prime may be flipping another soft commit to Florida State. Bentley, I know there's more notes. I want to keep some open. What are some of the things? What are some of your takeaways from this past week of transfer portal news?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Prime, and I'm trying to find the guy's name here, but there's an offensive lineman that played at Indiana. Maybe he's an interior guy because he's not showing up on the tackle list. Regardless, he played at Indiana, and his
Matthew Bedford.
initial yeah. So his initial commit in the transfer portal was to go play for Prime at Colorado, but he came out this week and he tweeted out an apology. Said, "Sorry, boys, I spoke too soon. I'm actually going to go play for Dan Lanning
Yeah.
and block for Dylan Gabriel up there in Eugene
Yeah.
for the Ducks." Also, big time news. Also in Eugene, 5-star quarterback out of UCLA, Dante Moore, has flipped his committal. He had, I guess he's not flipping it. He has decided to also go to Eugene and take a year to learn from Dylan Gabriel and then take over the reins, assumedly, in 2025 to play for Dan Lanning in the Ducks in the Big Ten, which is interesting because I'm sure we'll get to Dylan Raiola here in a minute. But Dante Moore was this 5-star true freshman coming out of high school that had originally committed to Oregon, but he knew that Bo Nix was going to be there. He goes, well, I kind of want to play right away, right? So he goes down to UCLA. He gets into the system. He plays a number of games this year. He battled some injury, played opposite of really, really good defense. And UCLA was competitive for most of the year in that very deep Pac-12. But I think that he kind of understood as the year came to a close that, hey, maybe I need a little bit more work. And I'm not sure that I'm getting that here at UCLA. So I respect the decision for him to go to Oregon, a very historic and very prominent program to go and maybe he thinks he's going to compete for the job. Maybe he knows he's going to sit behind Dylan Gabriel, but I have to assume he's going to be behind Gabriel, right? So good on him for choosing to learn and develop in college at a really good program over there in Eugene.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the note about Bedford, it felt like Coach Prime had kind of put his stamp on this year's recruiting class with understanding that they needed to get better in the trenches. And they still are bringing in 4 brand new offensive linemen, including, I believe, the number 4 offensive tackle from high school. Plus, they flipped a couple of guys in the transfer portal. So it looks like they've been able to revamp the offensive line. With Bedford, it looked like they were going to have 5 brand new starters next year and big time starters. But they now are going to have to obviously reconsider what they're going to do there with their 5th offensive lineman. That's been a big bugaboo for them this year, right? And that was going to be a huge coup, a huge win for Coach Prime. So he'll be back to the drawing board at least with 20% of that newly revamped offensive line. So that's a big win. And then you think about it, right? Oregon, they're no longer necessarily Pac-12 rivals, but they are still regionally, right? Regionally, they're still probably going to be recruiting from the same bucket in a lot of ways. But for Oregon to take a guy who left the Big Ten to go to Colorado, but then bring him back to the Big Ten is a big deal. You mentioned Dylan Raiola. Let's talk a little bit about that because this is, I think this is bigger news than it's getting in maybe in the mainstream, right? Georgia originally had Dylan Raiola's commitment. Now, if you don't know who Dylan Raiola is, his father played NFL offensive line for, I believe, like 13, 14, 15 years. Very, very good offensive lineman, made some Pro Bowls, was a really, really good player. His alma mater now is Nebraska, right? He played his college football at Nebraska. Nebraska has the history of putting offensive linemen in the NFL, a lot like kind of Wisconsin and Iowa, those corn-fed offensive linemen, putting them into the NFL. Dylan Raiola is not cut from the same cloth as his father. Now, his father was a very athletic offensive lineman, so it's not surprising that he's got an athletic son. But his son plays quarterback, so instead of protecting the quarterback, he'll be relying on others to protect him. He's a monster. He's one of probably the most highly sought after quarterback prospects in the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. Quinn Ewers, and he's of that kind of ilk. He's not quite what Quinn Ewers was coming out of college or high school, but he's of that kind of ilk, right? 5-star guy. Georgia had him, right? And if you listen to this podcast throughout this season, and if you watched Georgia play, that was a position that was a little bit weak for them after the Stetson Bennett era. Now, it's understandable. You got a guy who's collecting AARP before he leaves college, savvy guy, a lot of experience. And Beck is not the same guy as Stetson Bennett either, right? Bennett was a guy who could tuck it, run it, get you out of bad plays. Carson Beck wasn't that guy oftentimes this year. Dylan Raiola, on the other hand, would be that if he were to be playing down in Athens. However, Matt Rule, with a big coup, I don't know how much Dad's alma mater had to do with him flipping. I haven't really heard many statements from him or the family. Maybe you've seen some that I haven't, but just want to get your thoughts in terms of like, what does this mean in the grand scheme? Because that's a position, not only is it a big time position where we usually see those guys go to schools like Georgia and, the SEC schools are usually the ones that are taking these big time guys. Nebraska hasn't really had a quarterback since like Tom Osborne was the head coach, and they were winning national championships with like the wing T offense, basically running the triple option. This is a big deal, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's I believe he's the number 1 ranked quarterback in high school coming out this year. So top quarterback recruit in the class. He was a kid who lived in Arizona until I believe his senior year of high school. There's the whole like enrolling early thing so they can come onto campus and practice with the team, but obviously they can't play in games because they're still technically like high school students. The legality of it I don't totally understand.
It's
but
convoluted.
He's been on. Yeah, exactly. He's been on campus at Georgia. He's met all the guys. Obviously, he knows Georgia almost in and out at this point, right? So he moves from Arizona to Athens or to Columbus, Georgia, I believe. And so he's practicing, he's on campus, he's doing all the things, and he's like, man, I'm going to get to play in the system next year. I'm going to be the big dog, no pun intended. And then, like you mentioned, Carson Beck didn't have the hottest start to the year. Now, one thing that we know about NFL draft prospects is that they receive grades right after the season ends. Similar to the NBA, you receive a draft grade, you don't like it, you can go back. What I'm assuming happened is that Carson Beck received a draft grade, whether it's from an NFL scout, through his agent, however it happened. And earlier this week, Monday, he declared that he was coming back to Georgia to play in next year's season. Same with J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy also coming back next year. It's not official, but if you read the tea leaves, it appears that J.J. McCarthy is going to come back next year as well. Another school that Dante Moore, who will loop back into this, was also looking to transfer to. So he was kind of just accepting he was going to go sit behind somebody, whether it be Dylan Gabriel or J.J. McCarthy, right? Well, Dylan Raiola was like, oh, man, Carson Beck is coming back next year. Matt Rule is sitting there looking for a quarterback because he missed out, like you mentioned earlier, on Kyle McCord, who's going to Syracuse.
Yep.
So Dylan's like, man, why don't I just go play at the school where my dad played, is kind of a legend, and my uncle is the offensive line coach.
Yeah.
Also, I get to play right away.
Yeah.
Now they do have another kid on campus who was a standout at an Elite 11 camp, which for those of you who don't know, Elite 11 is this camp out on the West Coast. They bring in all of the top elite tier high school quarterback prospects. And Dante Moore was there. I believe Shador was an Elite 11 guy. Quinn Ewers was an Elite.
Arch Manning was there.
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler, your boy, was at one of the Elite 11s. So yeah, it's the cream of the crop of high school quarterbacks go to Elite 11.
Yeah, but to your point of it being a big deal, like in the landscape of college football, I do agree that it is a big deal, right? Only from the simple fact that if we look at recruiting rankings, and I know that the stars don't really mean all that much, but it is a good way to gauge where the talent disparity is across the country, right? How it's being dispersed, right? So this year, if you look at the On3 rankings, there are 18 teams in the country that have 5-star recruits. South Carolina has 2 of them, not a big deal. We don't get to harp on that, right? Last year, there were 15 schools. Well, I mean, we'll save that. I'll do a standalone hour on that by itself. But so last year there were 15 schools that got 5-star recruits coming out of high school. These are not transfer guys. These are just coming out of high school. It's a big deal that Dylan Raiola is choosing to go to Nebraska as a 5-star guy because it includes another team on that list of schools that now have a 5-star. And it is having the NIL era is having the impact that the people who initially put it in place wanted it to have, right? We didn't want to have just Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia get the 5-star guys, and then nobody else has any chance, right? But what you're seeing is that Nebraska, who historically has a very large boosters club, is allowed to dip into that NIL pool, cash pool, right? And pay a kid like Dylan to transfer to his dad's alma mater where his uncle is on staff and come home, quote unquote, and potentially be a legend, right? If he takes them to 2 bowl games, I mean, he's a legend. They haven't been into a bowl game in 7 years, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see that the desired effect of NIL is actually taking place, right? As much as you and I may not like it, some of the people who grew up in college football in the era where we kind of swept that stuff under the rug, it is having the correct desired effect of spreading talent across the country and trying to get programs of lesser ilk to be able to be competitive against the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Michigans and Ohio States of the world. So I think it is a big deal because we see guys like Dylan choose to go to these, I hate to say smaller school, but a school that's on a downswing rather than an upswing like Nebraska has been recently.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's an interesting piece, and I want to get your thought on that about the Carson Beck thing because I'd kind of considered, right, if I'm Dylan Raiola, do I wait it out a year and play at Georgia, or do I want to play right away at Nebraska, right? And there's pros and cons to both, right? You're at Georgia, a school that puts quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, right? Matthew Stafford is probably the prime example of a quarterback that played at Georgia and went on to have great success, won a Super Bowl, will end up in the Hall of Fame one day. whenever he decides to retire, it'll take probably 5, maybe 6 years for Matt Stafford to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Do you, right? If you're Dylan Raiola, do you take that into consideration and say, I sit 1 year behind Carson Beck, I get familiar with campus more, that sort of thing, or do you say, well, fuck you guys, right? Like I'm going to go somewhere else because I'm a 5-star quarterback. I'm the top dog in the land. I can go wherever the hell I want. Basically, any of these programs that has an opening would be ecstatic to have me come play for them.
Yeah.
How do you feel in terms of if you were to give advice, right, to Dylan, assuming that his father didn't play in the NFL, right? Because his father could give him plenty of advice about where to go to college. But if you were to give him kind of unsolicited advice, do you think he made the right decision? I guess is what I would ask.
Yeah, I think that he did. He's going to get more money to go to Nebraska. He's going to get an opportunity to get on the field at Nebraska. And he has an opportunity to become a legend at Nebraska. He's not going to be a legend at Georgia, right? Unless he's unless he's truly incredible, right? Yeah. Georgia has so many legends, that you would just be another one of them, right? Today's generation of college football fan, a lot of us, I'll put myself in this category, don't remember the Tom Osborne Nebraska era where they're winning national titles and are dominant, right? The Big Red Machine, that's Cincinnati. Was it the Big Red Machine? Were they the Big Red Machine?
They're Big Red. They call themselves.
Yeah, they're Big Red.
Yeah.
I know the Cincinnati Reds were the Big Red Machine, but their hashtag is Go Big Red, right? Like that's an era of football that I know about. That's not an era of football that I remember, right? So as awesome as it would be to play for Georgia, to be in the SEC, to be a perennial top 5 team, to play for Kirby Smart, all of this stuff, all of that is phenomenal, right? Don't get me wrong. That's an opportunity that not everyone has. But he has an opportunity to do something very special at a program who is going to embrace and love him like they just wouldn't at Georgia. Yeah. They're used to 5-star guys coming in. So if he performs poorly, then he gets shit on by the Georgia fans, right? If he comes into Nebraska and struggles a little bit early, they're going to be like, dude, it's okay. Like, stick it out. We got you. We're going to do everything we can to bring in guys and surround you and to build you up, rather than Georgia looking to be like, maybe he's not the guy. Let's go get someone else.
Yeah.
What I would have given him advice on, though, is to not announce his commitment in a poem. That's what I would not have suggested.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Yeah, to give you perspective, right? You mentioned it. Like there's men of a certain age, right? Are those that remember when Nebraska was good. I remember it. I was 8 or 9 years old when they were good last.
Yeah.
And to put it in perspective for you, Tommy Frazier, who is their last great football player, basically, from Nebraska, other than Roy Halou, who is a Washington legend as well.
Yes.
I loved watching him play, but they weren't good when they had Halou either, right? I remember liking Roy Halou. The Tommy Frazier's 49 fucking years old. So it's been a long time, right? I also think that like the advantage that he has as well is that it's clear that Matt Rule is committed to a quarterback-centric offense. Now, they didn't have a quarterback that could run it this year, but they sure as fuck stuck to it. And there were some ugly, ugly games that Nebraska played this year because of issues with sloppy with the football, fumbles, a lot of bad picks, a lot of 3-and-outs because they couldn't complete a pass, that sort of thing. So you mentioned the fact that he could be a legend at Nebraska. Could you imagine being the guy who takes a once storied program who's been on the downswing for 30 years, 25 at least, years, and bringing them back to prominence, right?
Yeah.
Bring them back to the promised land. Now, the Big Ten's going to get tougher, right? Because they've got more schools coming in, more competition for recruiting and that sort of thing. But if he brings Nebraska back, man, and they've got some guys on the outside that can make some plays, right? They're not your household names that are going to be in the Heisman consideration like, Marvin Harrison Jr., but they've got some guys. If he can bring them back to prominence, because they've got a good defense. That's one thing that they've got going for them. They didn't give up a lot of points this year. Couldn't score any. They didn't give up a lot. Yeah, you nailed it on the head, man. He's got an opportunity to basically further his father's legacy that he left at Nebraska, going on to the NFL and being, a Pro Bowl caliber offensive lineman. So, yeah, I think he made the right choice in the end because of basically exactly what you said, man. At Georgia, you got an opportunity to win a lot of games, and you're going to play with a lot of really fucking stellar athletes. But even if you go on to win a national championship, like you're going to be kind of just like one more, right? There. Whereas at Nebraska, you've got an opportunity to do things that haven't been done since like 50-year-old Tommy Frazier was there. So, yeah, for sure. Any other news you want to talk about in the transfer portal or recruiting news before we shift gears?
Yeah, just I want to hit on the success of Lane Kiffin so far in the transfer portal. He has recruited. He has flipped, recruited, transferred. However you want to say it.
Gotten
12-ish guys, right? And the knock on Lane Kiffin has never been his offense, right? He's never had an issue scoring points. It's not something, you take the Georgia game out of it. Jackson Dart got hurt. That was the whole thing, whatever, right? Well, he brought in Juice Wells to improve his offense, which he was the number one ranked wide receiver in the transfer portal.
Yep.
And rumor has it that one Walter Nolan, the number one overall player, interior defensive lineman out of Texas A&M, sophomore, so he still has at least 2 more years of eligibility. Walter Nolan is rumored to also be transferring to Oxford, right? So I said he had 12 transfers coming in next year. I believe 11 of them were defensive players. The number may be off by 1 or 2, but all of them, other than Juice Wells, are defensive players coming into Oxford. And then you bring in Juice Wells and potentially the number one overall player in the transfer portal. I mean, Lane Kiffin is absolutely killing it in the transfer portal right now. And if you are a big-time recruit, why would you not go to Oxford,
Yeah. What's maybe a double dip on that? He's taking a lot of guys from SEC schools too.
Yep.
I think 7 of those transfers, 6 defensive players are from SEC schools. Juice Wells being the 7th. I want to circle back to this. I saw it pop up and never brought it up, but I do. I think Matt Rule's there for the long haul. I think he got his taste of the NFL. Now, maybe he moves on to another college school, but you mentioned it, right? Nebraska does have a really, really strong booster club. You don't think about like Omaha, Nebraska, that area to, Lincoln obviously being where they are, but, being near Omaha, Nebraska is like a hotbed for a lot of that like corporate money that usually is what funds these boosters. It's oil money in Texas. It's, Hollywood money out in California and, Silicon Valley and yada, 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 right? All the law schools in the Midwest and Northeast that have the, the booster clubs filling it up. But Nebraska's got a pretty big like tech scene. They've got Comcast, I think or not Comcast. One of the huge tech firms is like headquartered out of Omaha, and there's just a lot of people that stick around, and they bleed red and white. So I do think that maybe Matt Rule has found a place he can stick around for a little while. I think if you build this program up, they'll be able to foot the bill to keep you, unlike Baylor, right? Being the big place where he rebuilt after the whole fallout. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this is a long-term stay for Matt Rule, or do you think this is, I'm going to have a little success and I'm on to the next one? Because I think that's the most important piece about building around a quarterback is having that coach stick around.
Yeah, certainly. It's the head coach, it's the coordinators that you can fit around him if he's not necessarily an offensive or defensive guy specifically. I have to imagine that this is a place where Matt Rule feels like it's his last shot at a big-time program, right? So he's going to do everything possible to elevate this program to a point where the booster club and the AD and everyone deems it to be successful, right? So, yeah, I said it when I was talking about Raiola going there. and them really buying into putting players around him and putting things in place. Like they're going to do everything they can to make this kid succeed and stick around and play in bowl games, maybe make a bid or like a run to get into the 12-team playoff, right? It's all in right now with this kid because, like I said, I think it might be Matt Rule's last chance to get a big-time D1 coaching job. You know, he was successful at Baylor. He was successful at Temple. He was not successful in the NFL. Not totally sure that was 100% his fault or whatever, right? But if you fail twice in a row, it's not often that you get big-time head coaching jobs again.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, let's switch gears. Let's talk about the first week of bowl season because we had some really interesting games. We didn't have a lot of like marquee matchups necessarily. We talked about it last week that, you know, the early bowls, we're going to get some teams here and there, maybe a team that struggled a little bit and got to 6-7 wins and they're a big name. Or we get a bunch of like the mid-majors that, you know, or the group of 5 schools that, you know, are getting their bowl games here early in the season. But I mean, we had a couple of like crazy comebacks. We had an overtime game. You know, Texas Tech looked the part. Cal didn't show up. Actually, we had 2 overtime games. One was a huge blown lead. Let's start there. I want to start there because that's pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
So ODU is up 28-0, and somehow finds a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory and loses 38-35 in overtime to the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. What a bad way to end your season too. And ODU is one of those programs that every once in a while they'll pop up here and there. They had a Taylor Heineke run where he was just throwing the pill all over the park. Talk to me about this. Talk to me about this game, man. That's bad. That's bad.
Yeah, this game was wild because so Western Kentucky they obviously they battle back from 28-0, right? The game gets tied at 35 apiece. ODU has the ball. I'm looking at it here. They have it second, right? Second and goal. I've watched so much football recently that all my plays are getting jumbled together. They had it second and goal. On the 1-yard line. They get stuffed. Yeah, second and goal on the 1-yard line gets stuffed. Third and goal, they try the brotherly shove, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles play, get stuffed again. They go to line up to kick a field goal, and Western Kentucky blocks the kick. And then they go to overtime, and ODU missed the field goal, and then Western Kentucky walks it off and does toast angels on the field with a third-string quarterback playing, by the way, for Western Kentucky. I mean, that's like – was that the best football game of the year? I don't know.
That was pretty goddamn good.
Yeah, like it just seemed that ODU like gave up in the same. They allowed, you know, they're up 28-0, and then they allow a touchdown before halftime, and it's like, oh well, this fucking we take the second half off. Like no, you open the door when you let Western Kentucky score in the first half. You know, maybe it's a different ball game if Western Kentucky goes in with no points on the scoreboard. You know, momentum's a real thing in sports. You let them score before the end of the half, and then we see what happens from there.
Yep. Oh, what a mess! What a mess.
Yeah.
The other overtime game we had, I brought it up last week as a game I was paying attention to because Rich Rod is having some success there at Jacksonville State, and you know I mentioned last week maybe this is his kind of stepping stone to something else, right? He can get back into kind of prominence. He may never get the major job like he got at Michigan ever again, but getting another kind of big time program in a big time conference, continuing to have success. Jacksonville State, they pull off the overtime win against the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana. Not a great game in terms of there were quite a few turnovers and just sloppy play, but Jacksonville State survives, ends up winning in overtime, kind of a back and forth affair. I believe it's one of the only games that we've seen where each team scored a touchdown in every quarter of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of back and forth like that throughout the entire game. So really interesting game. It's great to see Rich Rod get a win there. Maybe, right, like I said, maybe he's building something there at Jacksonville State that's going to propel him to something bigger, because I don't imagine that's his end game anymore, right?
Right.
I think it was his way back into a head coaching job, but yeah.
Yeah, Jacksonville State rushed for 290 yards in this game, by the way.
Yeah.
On almost 4 yards a carry.
Yeah.
That's efficiency.
Absolutely. You mentioned another game where we had a big lead blown, and it may not look it on the final scoreboard, but Boise State had a pretty big lead against UCLA at one point in this game, and then they go on to lose by 2 scores.
Yeah.
35-22, UCLA kind of put it on them. Once they got going, it just seemed like that machine was rolling and it wasn't going to stop. What are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, you're up 9 in the third quarter, or excuse me, you're up 9 at halftime. Tough to come out and blow that kind of a lead to a team that played 2 quarterbacks because one of them got injured. I credit to Chip Kelly for keeping his boys motivated. You know, we talked about it going into the week last week. They were going to have to be down some guys on the defensive side, but they came out and pitched an almost shutout in the second half.
Yeah.
You know, they allowed 6 points in the second half, which, you know, that's pretty impressive for a team that you feel, with as impressive as their defense was and as competitive as they were early in the season in the Pac-12, it almost feels like a letdown to not get to a bigger bowl game than the Starco Brands LA Bowl. You know, Chip Kelly has seen the highest of highs in college football, played for a national title or coached a national title game. But, you know, credit to him for keeping the boys ready, and whatever he said to them at halftime in the locker room really obviously resonated with them.
Yeah.
And they came out and played much, much better in the second half.
Yeah, for sure. What other games you want to touch on last week?
I just would like to pour some out for the homie Diego Pavia. It did not go well for him, and the New Mexico State team against Fresno State.
Nope.
They just never ever got anything going on offense. I watched a lot of this game. I didn't watch every single snap, but I watched a lot of it, and it was just bad on the offensive side. He led the team in passing, obviously, but as well in rushing. He was the only thing that was going for New Mexico State, and that was not a recipe for success. Obviously, he's their best player on offense, but they also couldn't stop Fresno State from scoring on the defensive side. Excuse me. And, you know, as much as I love that New Mexico State team throughout the year, I watched a ton of their games because they were on like random nights of the week. But it was tough to see them go out and lay an egg in a bowl game after, you know, hyping them up so much coming into bowl season.
Yeah, Mikey Keene had a big day, almost 400 yards passing.
Yeah.
3 tugs. Pretty good day.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's shift gears. We got another week of bowl games here. Got a slate starting tonight with UTSA and Marshall. Unfortunately, for anybody tuning into that game, there are a lot of guys out. Injuries have been a concern. Guys that are hitting the transfer portal that have opted out of bowl games. Frank Harris, last I heard, was not expected to play, but he was gonna he left it until after warm-ups tonight. So I don't know if he's lobbying to play, to go out on, you know, on a bowl game, right? But they may be trying to tell him, you know, use your head. I'm not sure. But we get that game starting tonight with UTSA and Marshall. What do you think in this game, man? With all the players out, this might be a tough one to call.
Yeah.
I was having conversation with folks in Aaron's talking about Bowl Mania. Yeah, you know, and they're talking about, well, I picked UTSA before I knew Frank Harris might not play. That's a big deal because he's a big part of their offense.
Yeah, I believe the line for this game opened at, it was either 12.5 or 12 to UTSA, right? And like you said, it's come all the way down to 7.5. So the assumption is that Harris is probably not going to play in this game. If you're following the live lines, that's kind of Vegas will tell you a lot of things before it comes out in the news, right? probably take Marshall. If Harris doesn't play, I'm not. Sorry, I wasn't familiar with your work to the backup.
Yeah.
But Harris is such a key part in that offense. He
Yeah.
does everything for them, right? He really is the motor that makes that engine run. That was reductive. I said the same thing over again. He's the engine that makes the car move. That's what I'm trying to say about the UTSA offense, which is pretty good when he does play. So if he plays, I expect UTSA to win. If he does not play, I would not be shocked if Marshall pulls the upset out.
Yeah, they've got a true freshman, and I saw his name earlier, and now it's eluding me. Or a redshirt freshman. I'm sorry. Who's his backup? Who will be playing if he doesn't play? But Marshall's got a few folks out as well. Their starting quarterback isn't going to be playing this game either, so this could be an ugly game potentially. A lot of kind of first time guys getting action in a bowl game. Good for them, but could be a sloppy game, or it could be an explosive game, right? A lot of times with new players cycling in, sometimes you can get a lot of blown coverages and missed assignments, and you see a lot of offense. So maybe we're in for some fireworks.
Owen McCown.
That's his name.
I believe that's Josh McCown's kid, is it not?
I believe so, and that's what stuck out to me when I saw it, and then I completely lost it after I saw it.
As he was the quarterback that transferred out of Colorado whenever Prime and Shador showed up.
Yep.
He didn't have enough Gucci luggage to stick around.
Yeah, he didn't bring the right luggage.
Shame.
What's a matchup that sticks out to you though, outside of what we got going on tonight?
The Troy Duke game should be pretty good. Those are two. I'm not sure who the head coach is going into this game for Duke. Honestly, I'm not sure who the head coach for Troy is either, because both their coaches left.
Yep.
Duke obviously losing Riley Leonard. Troy's been really good all year long. Now they don't play the most difficult schedule in the world, but that doesn't mean you can't be a good football team. We saw it with Florida State. They were a very good football team. They didn't play a super tough schedule. Troy's 7.5-point favorite. I pretty much expect them to win this game and cover. Duke did not look great down the stretch without Riley Leonard, and they lost their superstar coach to Texas A&M. That one I don't expect to be the most compelling of games, but it's first game on Saturday. If you're not doing anything, may as well tune into that one, right?
Yep.
The Georgia Tech and UCF game should be pretty good, I think. Those feel like two equally matched teams, as well as two quarterbacks that probably deserve to be playing at bigger programs. John Rice Plumlee and Haynes King, former Texas A&M quarterback Haynes King. That game should be pretty fun, I have to assume. There's no real – I don't have like a really good lean. UCF is laying 4.5. I don't have a super strong lean that I'm convicted about one way or the other. That just feels like a game that would be entertaining, right? Like it's the only bowl game on Friday night.
Yeah.
Probably one you're going to want to throw on and sit down with a beer.
Yeah. Yep. Friday night, good time for some college football.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll shout out my boys in Syracuse. Not a football powerhouse. USF, not really a football powerhouse either. Probably most famous for Jason Pierre-Paul, who went on to win a couple of Super Bowls in the NFL. Was maybe the best, if not the best, then one of the handful best pass rushers in the league for probably a 4-year stretch, probably before he blew his hand off with some fireworks. But those two teams you mentioned earlier when we were talking both be playing with new coaches. And Syracuse has just landed Kyle McCord, that's very intriguing to me because Syracuse is not a place that lands big-time recruits. Not since, the days of Donovan McNabb and Marvin Harrison, and then before that it was, Jim Brown and Ernie Davis. They've had some stints with some good players, but really over the last 30 years, it's not been great there in Central New York for football.
Whoa, they had Greg Paulus, dude. All right, calm down.
Former Duke point guard Greg Paulus.
Yes. Maybe
I apologize. I left out the Duke great.
Maybe the most accomplished football player in Syracuse history.
Yeah, just in a different sport.
Well, hey, Hey,
That was
you
an
know,
interesting situation there when he decided he was going to forego anything after basketball and just go pursue his love of football. And
yep.
good for him for doing so. Um, Had a little bit
The
of a flash last year early, and then everything kind of fell apart.
yeah.
But Syracuse is not historically a program that's going to put a lot of W's in the left hand column of the standing sheet. But maybe McCord attracts some guys there. Maybe they can start recruiting, and they've got a guy there that can play. He played at big time school in Ohio State. However successful you think he was or wasn't with Ohio State, still played at Ohio State.
Is Syracuse's new coach coaching in this game?
Ooh, I thought they had an interim for the game, but I'd have to.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't know that. Not to put you on the spot, but I don't know that
I hadn't even.
how
I
that
know that.
works.
Uh, yeah, so Campanile will be coaching this game, and then Fran Brown will take over after
Okay.
officially take over after. But yeah, that was a good question because I know that they had made a change there. So
Yeah.
yeah, basketball school really with Syracuse. That's the big thing with Boeheim and the run that they had there. It was once a football school though. They had a run with Jim Brown and Ernie Davis back to back that they had a long stretch where they were pretty unbelievable. But and
Yeah.
then the Donovan McNabb and Marvin Harrison days were fun to watch. But not typically a football school, definitely more of a basketball school. However, if you know anything about lacrosse, they are a fucking powerhouse in
Yes.
lacrosse.
Yeah.
I believe they've got 6 national championships in lacrosse. Some of the best PLL players, if you pay attention to the PLL or MLL as well. There's 2 different lacrosse leagues in North America that they've put a lot of guys in those leagues. Carcaterra is a legend in
Yeah.
lacrosse, and he does a lot of football as well. He does a ton of sideline reporting for college sports. So, yeah, lacrosse is if you want to look where they've been the most successful, lacrosse is definitely it. But most known as a men's basketball school for sure.
Can I give you a gambling lean that I do feel fairly strongly about this weekend?
Yeah,
So Georgia State and Utah State are playing this weekend. The over-under is 59.5. Georgia State is playing without 12 players from their roster due to transfer portal or injury, and Utah State is onto their third string quarterback. So
is that any under?
anything can happen, right?
Yeah,
I have to say that anything can happen, but I don't know how they get to 60 points.
I don't know either.
You know,
Unless
I
unless
mean,
they really the ground game takes over or something. I would agree. Uh, I didn't realize they were down 12. 12
yeah,
guys.
I saw that
Ooh,
today.
yes.
Yeah,
Let's put a few ducats on the under there, probably.
yeah.
Nice.
How do we feel about James Madison versus Air Force? JMU playing in the first ever Division One bowl game. That's
Yeah,
exciting, huh?
I like it. I'd love to see them win. I know you've got a little bit of a kind of ribbing rivalry with a JMU fan there, but I'd love to see them win, man, just to stick it to the NCAA. I just love any opportunity we get to stick it to the NCAA, and I feel like JMU going and winning. It's a service academy, so obviously I have a little bit of a soft spot there for a service academy being a Navy vet, but um, I just I'd love to see JMU win and just stick it to the NCAA. Maybe win by a field goal, right? Don't blow them out, but
Sure.
go win your bowl game, and we can all tell the NCAA, we can all flip the NCAA the bird again.
When JMU won their national title, it was in Frisco, Texas. This bowl game they're playing is in Fort Worth, Texas. They have a history of winning postseason games in the state of Texas, so just an interesting note to keep an eye on. They are 1.5 point favorites. I think I lean Air Force Academy. JMU lost their coach. They lost their leading sacker who had like 19 and a half sacks in 10 games or something like that. I mean, just
Crazy,
historic pace. He
crazy.
might be a first rounder coming up in the NFL. We'll see. Um, Yeah, minus the coach and minus the best defensive player. Air Force is a good team. I know they stumbled down the stretch, but they started off the season super, super hot.
They were the top 25 at one point.
Yeah.
Then their quarterback forgot how to play football.
Yeah, that's very true. He struggled a lot down the stretch. It would be very cool to see JMU win. Don't get me wrong. My mom's an alum. My brother's an alum. I love JMU. Harrisonburg's gorgeous place. Their stadium is incredible.
It is in the smallest area. It is carved out of the countryside.
Yeah.
Out here in kind of Northern Virginia, kind of central. It's almost like on the border of Northern and Central Virginia.
Yeah.
But it is cut out of Harrisonburg, right?
Yep.
I believe is the name of the town. We so there's a water park. Massanutten is a popular water park here in the Northern Central Virginia area, and it's literally down the road from JMU.
Yep.
And we drive by it whenever we go down to that water park. It is gorgeous. You're not kidding. It is an absolutely stunning campus, just cut out of a slice of Americana. If you drive 5 miles from campus in any direction, you are in Mayberry. Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's crazy how they just cut a campus out of that and it grew to this big school. But yeah, it's beautiful there for sure.
Yeah, I love Harrisonburg, man.
Yeah.
Shout out Massanutten. I've been there so many times.
Yeah.
All four season resort, dude. You can ski in the winter. You can freaking water park in the summer. You can golf there, ride horses.
They're expanding
you can do it all.
too.
Really?
I heard that they're expanding it because a family friend that we went down there once with, he was telling me that they I guess they're expanding it. So
nice. Good for them. It's been around forever, man. It's been there for so long.
Yeah, for sure. Any others you want to pluck off the docket here?
I guess the last two on our list there. Anytime that Utah plays, it's always fun. Kyle Whittingham's group is one of the most disciplined and well-coordinated groups in the nation. And then Northwestern, shout out to them for making a bowl game after that mess to start the season with their coach getting let go because of,
hazing shit.
Yeah, the hazing stuff and whatever. And Coastal and San Jose State, those are two teams that could potentially light it up. I say that without knowing the status of Grayson McCall. I don't think he's going to play. I'm pretty sure he's in the portal and he's looking to go elsewhere, which is a bummer, right? But, it's a late game. It's one of our last chances to get to watch a late college football game of the year. So if you're up super late on a Saturday night and you want to get some gambling in or just watch college football for the last, this is sort of the last iteration of college football as we know it,
big changes for 2024.
Yeah, it could be a nostalgic experience for folks. So that'll be fun, I think.
Yeah. One of the big surprising things to me was Utah's only a 6.5-point favorite.
Yep.
I was surprised by that because I feel like Utah kind of outclasses Northwestern, but Vegas must know something, I guess.
They always do.
They always fucking do. It'll probably be a 6-point game, and I'll be bitching about losing by the hook or something. I don't know. I'm gonna lay the points, but knowing full well that it's probably gonna be a 6-point game, and Vegas is gonna win again.
Well, the ironic thing about that game is you're probably going to get a pig farmer against a future, partner at a law firm
or a lawyer, a doctor. Yeah.
Just the ultimate dichotomy of the two areas of the country that these programs come from.
Yep, absolutely. All right, bud. Well, excuse me. That's what we got for week 2 here of bowl season. We're gonna start picking up here soon though, because next week we're gonna review these games, but we're gonna be previewing New Year's Day bowls. So we got some big games next week that we'll be previewing. This is the fun part of bowl season, right? You get a little bit of a primer, and there's a lot of bowls. There's a lot of bowls, a lot of games. I was joking with guys earlier about being the old guy saying, get off my lawn. I remember when bowl eligibility meant that you still had to sweat being selected.
Yeah.
So there were bowl eligible. Bowl eligibility meant eligible for a bowl, not guaranteed a bowl like it is today. But I get it, money and all that, and it's great to see these kids get one more game. It is frustrating now with kind of the transfer portal rules, and we have so many of these games where guys are just not playing. Are they prepping for the NFL draft? Are they in the transfer portal? That sort of stuff, and
Yep.
you get these potential stinkers like we might end up with tonight if these backups don't play well for UTSA and Marshall. Potentially Georgia State. Utah State. That game as well with all the guys missing. Is that going to be a stinker? However, it's fucking bowl season, man. We got college football on, and we got college football on at all times of the day. Monday at 2 p.m, you could have a college bowl game. So we got plenty of college football for you to enjoy. Any closing thoughts as we make our way out the door here this week?
Man, I just love college football so much, dude. I bitch and I complain about the portal and the NIL and all this stuff, but like when the games are going on between the lines,
oh yeah,
none of that matters, man. The pageantry of it, the passion of the kids, the passion of the fans, like that almost makes up for all of the nonsense that we go through in the off season and then this transfer portal window kind of bit of the schedule. Like, I get excited when the spring games come around and you get the ones versus the twos or however they mix it up. I truly, truly value the sport of college football above probably any other sport we have going in America right now. And I hope that I'm able to convey to the folks out there how much the sport means to me and how much I really, really love it. And it plays such an important role in my life. And I just appreciate, having the platform to really talk about it with somebody who appreciates it just as much as I do.
Yeah, man. It's like I said, it's bowl season. It's exciting. We've got college football all hours of the day, all hours of the night. You want to stay up and have an adult soda, watch some college football, you can do that. You want to catch one in the mid-afternoon while you're going through boring paperwork or whatever you would do for work, you can turn on a bowl game and have it as background noise or a distraction from the everyday mundane. I'm not telling you to skip out on work.
Whoa.
But what I am telling you is that you do have the option of putting a football game on at 2 p.m. on a Monday and either enjoying it fully or it's background noise and it's college football, man. It's
nothing
beautiful.
better.
It's beautiful.
It's nothing better.
But yeah, man, I appreciate you as well. Your passion for college football makes this show so fun. Look forward to big bowl games next week, man. We get to preview some New Year's Day stuff, and then we're right around the corner from the national
playoffs, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, for Bentley and the rest of us here at Backyard Sports, this has been another bowl season episode of Tailgate Trash Talk, brought to you by Backyard Sports. We are out.